I watched one of the people I worked closely with and like considered a role model in many ways be executed in broad daylight, and the people who were, you know, tasked with carrying on that legacy, I feel like I've done the exact opposite. A leftist does not just wake up one day and decide to ruin their life because Charlie Kirk's in Utah. Like, that's just not how life works. By saying I forgive Tyler Robinson, you are indirectly labeling him guilty and he needs to be put to death.
All right, man, let's go ahead and get started, bro.
Cool.
I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know we haven't talked a whole lot beforehand, but again, I just really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. For those who don't know you and are new to your content, go ahead and just introduce yourself and give us a glimpse into who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mitchell Manley, also known as Meech, also known as ArtifexMemoriarum. And I spent over a decade inside the Turning Point USA ecosystem. I first met Charlie Kirk when I was 15 years old, back when Turning Point was in its infancy, as I like to say. Conservatism was not as cool as it is today, so to speak. It wasn't as trendy. It wasn't as popular to be a conservative. And so I went up to a camp during my sophomore summer in high school, to a camp in Colorado called the Young Conservatives Leadership Conference. And it was there that I attended the Western Conservative Summit for the first time. And that was where I first met Charlie Kirk, was at that camp. They gave him about a 5 to 10 minute kind of a slot to give essentially an elevator pitch, as to what he was building, as to what Turning Point USA would eventually go on to become. And he said, you know, if you're interested, come up and talk to me and I'll give you more details. And so that's what I did. I went up and I introduced myself. I said, hey, Charlie, I'm 15. I'm from Arizona. I'm interested in politics and I would love to get involved. And, you know, essentially he gave me his phone number and he said, text me and I will fast track you into events. And that's essentially what happened. From then on, I worked as a high school student to go to as many TPUSA events as possible. All right. My first event was actually that December of 2015. It was their Winter in West Palm Beach conference. It was about probably 300 to 400 of us student activists at the time, the kind of quote unquote OGs, as I like to call them, of Turning Point USA. And, you know, from there, I just kind of got involved. I got to meet a lot of people. I tried to start a chapter at my high school kind of after I first got involved. And that's kind of how I first met Tyler Boyer, was through that process, because he was involved kind of building things out here in Arizona as early as 2016. And so for me, essentially, that's kind of how I first got started.
Right on, man. Cool. I appreciate you diving into that and just giving us the background. So you say you met Charlie at this leadership summit. Talk to me a bit about that process. There's been a lot of questions about Tyler Boyer and TPUSA chapters, and are they real chapters, right? Give us a little bit of a behind the curtain look at that process.
Yeah, so I mean, TPUSA chapters have always kind of been an interesting point of conversation for those on the inside. I was never really too involved on the field side of things. I did work one summer as a field intern, and that was the summer of 2018. That was also the summer, though, where I was working very closely with Tyler Boyer to kind of build out the headquarters. They had just bought the new building in Arizona, and they were working to set it up. Their HR manager had left the country for about 3 weeks to go to Egypt. And so as a field intern, they tasked me with kind of, you know, finding contractors to help design this new headquarters. And, you know, everything from, you know, what kind of paint would we use on the walls to how would we build the kind of matrix TV walls that they had installed. But as far as chapters go, I think that, you know, they always worked to inflate numbers, whether it was chapters, whether it was views on videos, whether it was attendance numbers at events, right? That was kind of always par for the course, was making their side seem bigger than they were, right? And there was a reason for that. At the time, you know, we all kind of thought we were fighting this good fight, quote unquote, right? And everything kind of changed after Charlie. And so I think motivation-wise, you know, that was something that a lot of us were willing to kind of just ignore or kind of go along to get along with, because it supported the end mission of getting the president elected. And as far as chapters are concerned, I haven't paid too close attention to the kind of controversy that's surrounding them. However, in my personal situation, I was going to a charter school out here in Scottsdale, and my headmaster at the time said that TPUSA was too political, which is kind of hilarious because back then it was when the messaging was big government sucks and, socialism sucks and capitalism cures, which they have very much strayed away from in recent years. So I think that, as far as that's concerned, there's always kind of been this weirdness around chapters. I have known, field reps as well who it seems like they don't really have that much work going on, and they just kind of, hand off the work to their chapter leaders and things like that. So it's a very weird structure that exists. And, there's definitely a cause for, I see the cause for concern. I see the reason people are starting to ask questions there, because for sure, I think that it was something that was inflated to make it seem like it was bigger than it was. And it's interesting because we saw this massive influx of chapters after September 10th, right? But I think that what's going to be interesting is seeing how many of those actually last, right? I think there was that one interesting story we saw a couple months back where they had that chapter leader come out and basically say, hey, we don't really agree with what's going on. We don't really kind of agree with the way Eric is taking things. So we're going to separate ourselves. And I think that, the more that comes out, the more we're going to see those things start to happen.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah. I think somebody came out, and I know Dee did a podcast episode about this with this guy named Brian. We called him Brian the Auditor because he didn't want his identity out there. He kind of mentioned the TPUSA chapters were kind of being portrayed as something that they weren't, which struck a chord with me because I always had this vision of TPUSA as like a grassroots, led by kids kind of movement, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, that's what it was. I don't want you to think that's not what it was, right? That's kind of what made it cool, was the fact that it was this kind of grassroots student first movement. And I feel like in recent months, that's very much shifted, into this kind of, we support the establishment, you can't question us. When before, it was very much a welcoming kind of place for, I don't want to say weirdos or outcasts, but like I said, it wasn't cool to be a conservative, 8-10 years ago. And so I remember back in my day, my senior prank in high school, I was slapping socialism sucks stickers on every locker. And one of my teachers had a Karl Marx poster, and I can send you the picture. You can include in the video. I slapped socialism sucks stickers all over this Karl Marx poster.
That's hilarious.
And my teacher was like, you're buying me a new poster. And I was like, oh, that's very, that's very Marxist of you. That's very communist of you, make me buy one. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as it goes, I think that the overall kind of intention and mission, as far as Turning Point USA as a whole is concerned, has shifted far away from what it started as. That being said, Charlie always wanted Turning Point to be bigger than CPAC, right? I was on some of the delegations that were sent out to CPAC as Turning Point USA ambassadors. I think I went in 2017, 2018, and then 2019, and then they stopped sending TPUSA. I might be incorrect in those years, but I went a couple of those years. And, over time, Charlie kind of just stopped sending TPUSA because he wanted to do his own thing. And I think we saw him do that with AmFest for sure. I think that even with the tablings and the debates, we saw him have a far greater impact than anything CPAC has done in the last 20 or 30 years. But I think, after his assassination, after his death, we've seen their mission kind of shift into this quasi-Bolshevik-esque, like, we're just going to back whatever Trump does, and we're not going to ask questions, and we're not going to challenge the deep state. When, again, Charlie Kirk was the man who asked questions relentlessly, who was at war with the deep state, right?
Exactly.
All these sorts of things that we've now come to know. It's a very interesting time for our nation, for sure.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. And that's kind of where we talked about a little bit before, but kind of how I got started in all this is because Charlie really set the tone, if you think about it, for truthers like me and you to be brave, so to speak, and how we felt and how we thought, some of the things that we thought that the country was doing wrong, right? Straying from the original ideas that the country had for itself in the beginning. So it's interesting now that Charlie's gone to see such this big shift. It went from speak your mind, speak your truth, to to, I guess, speak your
Speak
truth.
our
Yeah,
truth,
you know what I mean?
actually amplify what we're telling you is true,
Right.
which I think is the most interesting thing, right? It's not because
Yeah.
I put a clip up on my Twitter a couple days ago, and it was Erica, when Charlie had first been assassinated, on the Charlie Kirk Show, saying that, you know, the audience of the Charlie Kirk Show was the pulse point for Charlie. You know, he was always listening to his audience. I worked on the Charlie Kirk Show back in 2020, back before it was as big as it is, right? And I was the one kind of running the freedom@charliekirk.com email that he would always kind of say, hey, email us your questions, right? So I was fielding a lot of those at the time. And you know, especially during Stop the Steal, because that happened towards the end of 2020. I was working as an intern then. Sure. I got to see the way in which he wanted to hear from the people, right? He wanted to have a back and forth with them. He wanted to know what his audience was thinking. He wanted to know what his audience was saying. He wanted to know what his audience was feeling, right? And that's why, you know, as far back as a couple months before his death, he was making regular trips to DC to try and talk the president out of going to war with Iran, because he knew that my generation, the people that had just put Donald Trump back into the White House, did not want another, you know, as Charlie himself called it, endless quagmire in the Middle East, right? And that's kind of where we find ourselves today, and it's tragic. But I think it explains kind of the overall betrayal and tragedy that we've witnessed.
Yeah, that's fair. That's interesting. I do want to dive into that a bit, if you don't mind. I did a video, I want to say it was back in October, and I was kind of just looking into TPUSA, the early beginnings, how Charlie got started. Can't remember the guy's name that funded TPUSA.
Is it Bill Montgomery or Foster
Bill
Freeze that
Montgomery,
you're thinking
yeah.
of? Because it might be
Bill
one of those two.
Montgomery.
Montgomery, okay.
Charlie's initial salary with TPUSA, his first year, was $27,000.
Yeah, it wasn't much.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, for 18-year-old, a lot of money. Don't get it twisted. But it did paint a picture of, I guess, somebody who was the face of the TPUSA organization, but not being in charge of TPUSA. Do you agree?
Well, it's funny you say that, because did you see what I put out a couple days ago about the pay breakdown?
No.
Of so I'll send you the graphic. You can put it up on screen when you edit this. Ministry Watch, which I would highly recommend you go check out some of their reporting. Anyone who's listening to this, go check out Ministry Watch, because they're some of the ones doing some really good reporting on Turning Point USA and their associates. What they revealed is that as far back as, I think it was June of 2025, again, I don't want to be incorrect, and so that's why I'm going to send you the graphic. You can throw it up. But you know, right before Charlie's death, they got some numbers and they made them public. And essentially, this individual whose name is John McGovern, who is essentially kind of a gifts officer. He works in the development department under Stacey Sheridan, was making about $100,000 more than Charlie Kirk was at the time, right? And this is someone who, I mean, I knew about him because I've worked alongside him, right? I have 10 plus years inside this ecosystem. I know all these people personally. I've, you know, worked events with him, kind of done photos for his donors that he's brought in, right? So him and I know each other. I didn't know this man was pulling 100 G's more than Charlie. I don't think many people knew that, right? And so it gets to the deeper question of, like, A, why? B, did Charlie know? C, is this why he was calling the Doge audit? And D, has that changed, right? Is he still the one pulling the most money? You know, there's so much there that could be unpacked. And it gets to the deeper thing of Ministry Watch was also the ones who reported that the same day that Erica Kirk launched her, you know, Make Heaven Crowded tour, was the same day that multiple lawsuits came out of Romania against Greg Laurie's church, you know, alleging sex crimes and things like that. So it's just interesting, man, all the little coincidences that keep lining up with these people. But we're just told to, you know, trust them at their word and not question any of their actions, even though they're claiming to be Christians and patriots, and their actions indicate otherwise all the time.
Yep, 100%, bro. I think it was Norman Mineta who, from the 9/11 Commission, and I'll never forget what he said regarding 9/11 and Bush and possibly having foreknowledge. He's like, you know, you see something one time, it's a coincidence. 2 times, it's a pattern. 3 times, it's a program. And I think a lot of people are starting to really notice that the program, right, with TPUSA from the beginning, and we're just now starting to see the remnants of that now that the gatekeeper is gone.
Yeah, no, and that's like what's been one of the toughest things for me to have to just accept and process and try and work through emotionally, spiritually, everything, right? Is that, again, I know a lot of these people. These people were, like I've known Tyler since I was 16 years old, right? I'm 27 today. That's over 10 years of knowing someone. We operated in a lot of the same spaces, right? And so it's not just Tyler. It's the camera ops that were directly next to Charlie the day that he was killed. I toured with them very closely for essentially the entire election in 2024. My last event with Visual Impulse was August of 2025, right? Like literally, I think today was my 1 year. My last event, August 11th, was when I flew home. Like insane, right? And so, obviously, what I'm doing is not the easiest. I've sacrificed a lot to speak my mind, to share my kind of perspective, and I think that as far as what you just referenced is concerned, like it sucks, man. It's awful to realize that, like, yeah, Charlie, Candace, Tucker, Joe Kent, like a handful of others, myself, Aubrey Leish, like these were really the only people who actually believed in the things that Charlie was saying, right? And everyone else was just kind of there for the ride and as far as they could get in DC, and it just really rubs me wrong in my soul, and it makes me question like what is real, what isn't, It's been a very isolating experience. I'm very blessed and grateful for the community that I've found, in speaking out online. But like, as far as like my personal life's concerned, bro, it's not easy, and like that's what also kind of makes it another level of difficult is like, I'm over here just trying to process a lot of this, right? And what I'm sharing, it's again, always in good faith. I'm not out here with any, negative or like malintent. I'm not out here trying to make money necessarily. This is just because I watched one of the people I worked closely with and like considered a role model in many ways be executed in broad daylight. And the people who were, tasked with carrying on that legacy, I feel like I've done the exact opposite. And so I'm just more surprised that more people, who were closer or still aligned have not spoken out. And that's what has been just like the toughest thing for me to have to kind of wrestle with, Yep.
I totally agree, man. It's one of the most alarming things about the whole thing, because I was really surprised it took so long for someone like you to come out. And two, when you did come out and started speaking out, and you've been vocal on X, if anybody hasn't seen that, please have a good time.
Well, and I'll tell you real quick.
Bro. Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but real quick, when I first came out, someone was like, dude, you realize you're out now. You have to either like go hard or like never say anything else. And I'm like, all right, like, here we go. We're going all in, like it is what it is. But anyways, continue.
Yeah. No, you see the sign in the back, bro? Got to be all in.
Yeah.
So, and saying that, it did, you can speak to this a little bit better, but a lot of people watching, and I know you've been on other platforms. The immediate criticism is, how can we trust you? How can we say this guy knows what he's talking about? He's not making it up. In my opinion, the proof is just going to your page, bro, because I saw all this footage that I've never seen before. And I'm like, who filmed the footage if you didn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting, right? And it gets to the deeper point of, this is something that Charlie and Candace dealt with as far back as 2018, right? And that's a video that I love posting. I love dropping it because it really kind of amplifies what we're living through right now, which is, we are not at war with the left right now. We are dealing with a civil war within conservatism. We are fighting to define where kind of our movement and party is going to go for the next 30 years. For our children's lifetimes, like essentially is kind of what we're fighting to define. And also at a deeper level, we're fighting for truth, right? And in 2018, Candace Owens and Charlie Kirk were in the arena, were in the culture war alongside Kanye West. And I know you've seen some of those videos I've posted. I just posted another one last night, right? The TMZ interview is great. But like Charlie and Candace went to the Steamboat Institute I think it was after this, and they were just kind of talking about what happened, the impact. And the thing that stood out to me the most is that they say that,
Charlie himself says the thing Candace and I don't do is we don't engage in friendly fire, conservative on conservative. We don't I would rather have an 80% ally than a 20% enemy. Right. And it seems that on one specific issue, and we can go there if you want, the conservative movement, what it used to be, the people who used to be the thought leaders have started to align themselves not on foundational principles, not on, preserving justice, not on innocent until proven guilty, not on these foundational things that 4 or 5 years ago with Kyle Rittenhouse, they were, barking and happy to defend, right? All the time. They're now pivoting, doing a 180, and it's not necessarily because of anything outside of this country, the Middle East, that we all kind of are aware of at this point, right? And they're working hard to try and get us off of that topic, I think. But it's a weird time for us, dude. It really is. And I think if people haven't seen that 2018 clip of Charlie and Candace, go back and watch it, because another thing they talk about is how Kanye's words from that time, which again, the thing that put Candace and Kanye and Charlie in each other's ecosystem was when Kanye West tweeted 6 words, "I like the way Candace Owens thinks," right? That's it.
Yeah.
And that went viral as heck. And in my opinion, that's the moment that the intelligence agencies were like, oh snap, we need to get our stuff together, because the people are actually, they're getting close to the truth, right?
Sure.
And so that's why we saw what we saw in the next kind of 5-6 years, which is, they worked to isolate Candace outside of the Daily Wire, they tried to make it seem like Charlie and her weren't friends, which I think that's a complete and utter lie. I truly think that Charlie and her were texting up until the day before his death. We'll see. I think she's still holding on to stuff that she hasn't revealed. We'll see what happens. I've never talked to her, but we'll see. Yeah. But also, I think that it explains kind of what Kanye went through, right? Where they tried to kind of make him go crazy and may or may not have replaced him entirely. Who knows, right? And Charlie was kind of the third piece in that puzzle that they were trying to silence and stop. Yeah. And I've laid it out already on my timeline, the deep state kind of, it goes as far back as 2023. These people were trying to stop Charlie from engaging on this issue, right? Yep. And once he drew that line in the sand, well, oh my gosh, conveniently, the next day he ends up bleeding out of the neck in a menorah. What are the odds of that?
Yeah, right?
It's just, come on. How naive are we, guys? Let's wake up. As Charlie said about JFK, I think we're all smart enough to realize that this wasn't a lone shooter, right? And it's the same thing here. A leftist does not just wake up one day and decide to ruin their life because Charlie Kirk's in Utah. That's just not how life works. Let's all be realistic here. Come on, guys. And I want to touch on something else that you said as well, which is what took someone like me so long to come out, right? And I think that there's a lot of things that could potentially explain that, but also it's something that I've been wondering myself, right? And that's, I don't have the closest proximity to these people anymore, right? Again, for those of you who don't know my story, I worked many different levels, layers within Turning Point USA. I'll give you a quick sales pitch, right? So I met Charlie when I was 15, started going to events, tried to start a chapter, couldn't, went to a college that Charlie Kirk recommended out in New York City, lived out in New York until the pandemic hit. And during some summers, I would come back to Arizona and intern for Turning Point USA. Once the pandemic hit, came back, started interning for the Charlie Kirk Show. And then after the Stop the Steal happened and all of that, I migrated over to Turning Point USA Productions as an intern. And once I graduated in May of that year is when I started full-time with TPUSA Productions. So I started out as an admin and then worked my way up to a producer. I produced documentaries. I produced Jack Posovic's daily news show, Human Events, for about 8 months, right, as an associate producer. And that's, I don't know if you've seen me kind of going hard against him. It's because I worked very closely with him. And we can talk a little bit about that later. But he's part of the reason kind of why I stepped out of Turning Point USA officially. And it's a much larger conversation and motivation and explanation, but it really gets to what Candace has been, hinting at, alluding to, which is this kind of silent takeover, subversion, isolation of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. And it was something that I felt taking place, as far back as 2022, maybe even 2021, really. And I finally kind of saw myself out in 2023. And, it was one of those things where I was noticing Turning Point as a corporate structure going in a different direction. And I also could feel that Charlie himself was like kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, right? And it's a funny story because I had just come out of my exit interview, right, which I've tweeted about it. It was done with this individual named Dylan Erickson, who at the time was working for HR and now just happens to be a director there. It's just like very convenient how these people all got promotions when I could never get one in productions at the time. Again, just silly stuff.
Sure.
But I came out of my exit interview with him and ran into Charlie because he was coming back from a workout. We had just installed the gym at HQ. And I was like, dude, can I get 2 minutes of your time real quick? And, told him how grateful I was for all the opportunities and experiences he had given me. I was like, hey, I don't really agree with the way everything's kind of going here, but like you as an individual, you will always have my support. We've been in this thing since I was 15, since you were young. Like, dude, I'll always be there, always be in your corner, whatever. And, he was like, thank you for everything. If you ever want to come back, we'd be happy to have you. All right. And so, when I got asked to rejoin the contracted media crew during the election season as a freelance camera operator, I was happy to because I wasn't dealing with Turning Point USA's corporate structure. I wasn't having to go through any of their managers. I wasn't having to deal with any of that, high school-esque crap. And I've talked about it before. Yeah. It very much was a high school corporate environment. Like I would come home and talk to my dad about things and I was like 22, 23 and he'd be like, dude, that's like not normal at all for like a normal company. Right. Yeah. And it was just weird. But as far as like why it's taken someone like me so long, I partially it was I wasn't aligned right directly. I had left in 23. I did take a new job at the start of September 2025, right? I took my new job September 1st, 2025, and then 10 days later, I get a text, hey, they just shot Charlie, and I was like, oh, okay. So, like, then that's a whole other thing. Like, it's very suspicious. But anyways, I wanted to trust that the people who had been given Charlie's platform, inherited Charlie's platform, were going to do the things that they said, right? Sure. Which was preserve his legacy, carry on his mission, honor him, etc. And, I went to the memorial. I had to fight my way onto the floor. I made it onto the floor. And, sitting there listening to the speeches, it was like everything was kind of like, okay, like, yeah, but it still was just like, it felt weird. It felt off. And I just kind of like sat on it, right? And I don't know, I would talk to some people here and there. I would kind of get a pulse from some people who are still on the inside. And I was like, something ain't right, And so in January was when Candace first mentioned my name and my father's name on her podcast. Really? And I woke up to a text and my friend was like, hey, why is Candace talking about you? And I was like, let me go find out, right? Went and looked.
Talked about you on an episode?
Yeah, in January, she was just trying to connect dots, and it's actually been one of the things that some of the conservatives have thrown in my face, which is like I'm, mentioned in this lawsuit. It's with this trust, and I really don't know too much about it. It was like this old dude my dad worked for, and he gave all of his money to conservatives, right? And so, anyway, she mentioned my name thinking that I was somehow connected to this, and that kind of like brought me back into things a little bit, because up until that point, I had really kept my head in the sand intentionally, right? Sure. I was very mad. I was very frustrated. The day that it happened, I knew what had happened. I believed everything I'm saying now for the most part. I wanted to believe that like, oh, somebody shot him, right? Because like, again, that was something that I feared being on tour with him every day during the election was like, dude, we don't have Secret Service level security, right? And we're on campuses. And my fear was like someone coming up point blank and just, like something like that, right from the mic, because that would be more effective, I guess, if you want to say it as morbid as that sounds, right? You wouldn't have to deal with all this stuff we're dealing with, but that adds to the Fed slop kind of chaos of things. I digress. I wanted to, trust that the narrative we were being fed was legit. I wanted to trust that the people who inherited this platform were going to do what they said. I wanted to have, faith in these people and the institutions, right? Because that's what we're told to do. And that's partially why I waited so long. I also, taking a new job in a political environment, I was aware of, hey, maybe, I might face consequences if my words end up getting amplified. And lo and behold, that's kind of what happened. Without going into too much detail, like I had been kind of posting relentlessly for 2 weeks, and my employer, even though they had told me kind of 4 days prior, we were going to renew your contract, came in on Monday and they were like, actually, we're not going to do that. And
on second thought,
there's a lot that goes into it, right? Like I was working for Maricopa County.
county. Tyler
Yeah.
Boyer has ties to the county. It's a whole thing. Like, we don't need to go into it. But
okay.
regardless, that's kind of why I waited so long, right?
Sure.
Like obviously this stuff has real world implications, right? We've seen some of that play out this week, like with these lists that people are making and the doxing and stuff, right? Which,
Yeah.
you know, at first I guess I tried to be semi-anonymous with the whole Artifacts thing. And then it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, but like, I can't really do that, right? And if you want to be taken seriously and you want to have some sort of like, again, people asking why should they take me seriously? Because I'm not really out here hiding behind an anonymous face. I have my LinkedIn is very public.
True.
I've been very transparent about pretty much
Very true.
everything in my life,
Very true.
up until this point. And the only kind of criticism is that I'm not giving people everything that they want when they want it. Which, like, sorry, you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer. But like,
Right.
again, I've only been here for a month and a half, 2 months, and I'm still trying to get my bearings, figure things out, figure out where the cards are kind of lying and where they're going to fall. And so I don't know, hopefully that answers your question a little bit, but like, I think also at a deeper level, people aren't necessarily in the position I was, right? And without going into too much detail on that, I'll say, like, you know, I met Charlie at a very young age. I got involved in the Turning Point system pretty early on, and I was trusted, and I trusted the people right back, right? It was a mutual level of trust. And so with that, I you know, I'm very lucky to have the kind of ability and freedom to speak in the way that I am, because I got out, you know, at a time that I felt everything was kind of starting to shift, right? And that's all I'll kind of say there. But like, you know, I'm very blessed and I'm lucky, and I'm not going to stop kind of applying pressure to these people, because again, this is a biblical level betrayal, not even, you know, I'm betrayed, yes, but like, it's not about me, right? This is about what happened
Sure.
to Charlie and the parallels there historically, and what we're living through right now, and the tyranny that our government is pushing in our faces and down our throats. So
Yeah.
hopefully that helps answer your question a little bit more.
Yes, definitely did, bro. Definitely did. And I don't want to push back too much, but I feel like I'd be a bad interviewer if I didn't follow up on this a little. If I'm not mistaken, you were mentioned in a lawsuit that involved your father?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so, again, not trying to push too much, bro.
No, I mean, I've talked about it before on other shows. So I mean, you can ask me. I'll answer if I can. If I can't, it is what it is. But
Sure. Okay. Well, just the connection. Because obviously, people watching this for the first time would be like, he's an insider, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's more to him. So I just want to...
Yeah, so I mean, the long and short of it, you know, again, it's still in active litigation, so I can't really
Sure.
say too much, right? I've had to send in conversations, etc., right? So there's certain things I can and can't say. What I will say is, like, the article that's out there is a one-sided legal complaint written by an individual's legal team who is essentially accusing my father of things that aren't true, right? And so what happened is there was a man that my father was working for who made some changes to his estate, to his trust, right? And after his death, his grandson, who initially figured he would be getting some of that inheritance, realized that he was not ending up with that. And then, you know, because I just so happened to work for Turning Point USA previously, I don't even think it was at the same time. You know, I was the son of my father, and my father was kind of this guy's day-to-day whatever, just kind of helped him out, right? It was nothing like that. He filed this whole legal complaint, you know, and you know, we've been dealing with multiple different legal avenues, right? I've spoken to Turning Point USA's lawyers this year, right? And so it's just like, there's things like, again, it gets to the deeper point of like, if I was in any way kind of getting a kickback from Turning Point and anything, which is kind of how they're trying to phrase it, I think, right? It's so weird. Why would I be speaking out against them now? Like, it doesn't track logically.
That doesn't make
right?
sense.
And so it's a weird
Yeah.
thing, man. People are trying to use it to discredit me, and I've been very transparent as much as I can be about it, right? Because
Sure.
again, I don't want to like, you know, say anything that's gonna mess anything up. But again, I did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong. I'm sitting here living in my same apartment I was in 4 or 5 years ago, right? So like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's pretty much the long and short of it. And yeah.
No, I get it, bro. I get it. And I'm a big believer in the truth always just coming out. I don't care who you are or what you've done. It doesn't matter. Truth always finds a way out. So I'm not one to judge you, brother. Like I said,
No, yeah, of course. And again,
that.
it's just like one of those
Yeah.
things where it's like people I feel like don't really have a solid grasp of how the legal system works, right? It's one of those things that people keep talking about in spaces all the time, but it's like there's so many layers to lawsuits and complaints and litigation and, you know, subpoenas and everything like that the general public feels like they know. And once you're kind of
But they
involved
don't.
in it, you realize, oh, this is actually like way more in depth. It is what it is, and people like to feel like they're, you know, gonna tear me down with that, and it's cool. Like, okay, like, I don't know.
You
It's
got
funny
it.
too because like I'm just kind of mentioned in
Sure.
it. Like I'm not really. They're just like, yeah, no, he's like his son, his dad. And I'm like,
But
okay,
you
but,
know, they'll look for anything.
oh, of course,
To,
of course.
He's in a lawsuit. You know.
Yeah.
Just relax.
Yeah.
No, I get that, bro. So let's pivot off that. I'm curious because obviously, from everything you've said and experienced, putting myself in your shoes, the willingness to leave TPUSA when you're like, let's put it this way. I told you I play ball. If I was working for a company that Derrick Rose owned and operated, you would have to like cut off a limb for me to like leave that company. Like, this man is my idol.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
dude.
So I'm like, what did you see? What did you experience? Is there one specific turning point, pun intended, where you're like, okay, something's off here?
It wasn't a singular turning point, right? And it was, yeah, you're right. Like you put it perfectly. It was one of the hardest things for me, right? And I don't know, as a high schooler who met Charlie very early on, I debated not even going to college and just kind of going to work directly for the company out of high school, and decided against that. I ended up going to, again, a college that Charlie recommended. I received the final Turning Point USA scholarship at that college, and so I think just like generally speaking, it was something that was a compounding feeling. It started out very far back, right? And even when Charlie ended up where he did with Trump and the tours and everything like that, you know, his kind of peak, quote unquote, if you want to call it, even I in 2022, 23 could have never imagined where that was going to go, right? As far as my specific motivations, I mean, being very transparent here, it was something where, you know, I met Charlie when I was 15. I was involved when it was nothing, pretty much. Like, it was not cool to be a conservative. And as I was, you know, working my way up through productions and you know, delivering pretty successful results, I produced a documentary with Charlie Kirk as the executive producer that ended up running to 500,000 views on Rumble in a week and won a Gold Telly Award. You know, I didn't feel like a lot of the work that I was delivering was being recognized, so to speak, right? And simultaneously, there were a lot of people that were being brought in from the outside, specifically by individuals like Tyler Boyer. And I just looked around and I was like, wait a minute, these people aren't efficient. These people don't really know what they're doing. They haven't been here for as long as people like me have, right? So like, what's really going on, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of started to notice that happening slowly, but that was happening as far back as like in 2020, right? Like this goes back far. This was a slow build, and it gets to the deeper point of like, if you were to flood a room full of, I don't know, bees, everyone would notice at once if you flood it, right? But if you slowly introduce bees over time, you're like, you get what I'm saying, right? That's a
100%.
really crappy analogy, but like, you understand what I mean, right?
Spot on, yeah.
Slowly boil the frog.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of part of what it was. We had just kind of come back from a donor fundraising event that they did every winter, and I remember they made like 12 or 20 million that year. And I had just finished the documentary, and they were like, hey, give us your number and we'll try our best to match it. You know, this was during raises and reviews and everything. And so I went home, did my research. I, you know, asked for a very moderate market salary for a producer in Phoenix, and they laughed me out of the office, and they said, you know, directors don't even make that much, which again, with the numbers I've now found from Ministry Watch, is just hilarious.
That's crazy.
Because it was like pennies in hindsight if you look at those numbers in comparison, right? It was like 54 was what I was making, up to like 70 is what I was asking, right? And this was like 2023. So whatever, right? It's not about that. There was also like deeper things, right? Like I said, I was working for Jack Posobiec, and you know, there were some of the things I've tweeted about Ali Alexander. Like, that news broke in, I think, May of 2023, and it was something where
I kind of challenged him on personally. I was like, dude, like, what is this about? This dude was at your wedding. Are you guys friends? Are you not? He has these allegations. What do you know? And just kind of like danced around the question, didn't really want to answer it. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I don't really like that, and, there's some other things too, just his treatment and rhetoric around transgenders, I felt like wasn't necessarily the most Christian. It was just, he just demonized people. And I, as a Christian, I didn't feel like that was a way to bring others to Christ, truly. And so I didn't want to be associated with that. So it was kind of a 1-2 punch, right? I wasn't really feeling recognized on the production side. And I also had this, like, I was kind of forced out of the POSO deal after I wasn't going to just blindly go along with what was happening. And I was like, this is weird. I'm going to go do my own thing. And, I'm a photographer, videographer. I'd always wanted to go work in music, right? I lived in New York City for 3 years, big into raves. I skipped my senior prom to go to my first rave. And so, I stepped out of TPUSA. I told myself I have 1 year to, land EDC. And sure enough, I landed John Summit, Green Velvet, closing set 2024, at EDC Las Vegas. And so I did, pretty much everything I tried to go and do in music. And not really, there's so much more I still want to do, but like for someone who just got into the game full time, that was like a peak for me. And, that was kind of when I started getting back into touring with Charlie as the 2024 election ramped up, and I was doing raves and touring with Charlie simultaneously. That was such a fun year, dude. It is like one of the best years of my life. So like that's a little bit of the motivation. I kind of started to see it shift over time, but again, when I got asked to come back and tour, I was more than happy to do it. And also, I want to emphasize this, I realized that Charlie had been insulated as far back as 22, 23, even maybe 21 by Tyler Boyer, bringing in people like Andrew Colvett, Mikey McCoy, etc. And when he got on a campus, and he was just under the tent, and it was like me, another cam op, director, whatever. He was just riffing with these students for 3 hours a day. Like, he would be looking at me, like cracking jokes half the time, and like it was so authentic, and that was where he was truly happiest. But also, I got to realize that this man's mission had surpassed the political, right? We had entered a spiritual war, so to speak, and we're always in one. But Charlie brought that war kind of to the forefront. And I remember, as someone who had lived through 10 years plus of TPUSA, kind of tuning out Charlie, getting to the point of just like, filming the stuff and going through the motions, right? Because it gets very repetitive as someone who's there all the time. And there was this one video that we were shooting, and it's up on my Twitter, where this guy asked Charlie, hey, I got shot with a bullet, I have 30 seconds left to live. What's your advice for me? And he delivered the most profound, just soul touching, biblical truth about, Jesus Christ. And it was in that moment where I kind of came back to reality, and I was like, wow, this man is like not just a political talking head. He's not just a Jack Posobiec or a Benny Johnson. This man is like waging spiritual war. He's impacting, lives. He's going out into the arena and touching the lost and engaging with the youth, typically, a generation that is forgotten about, and they don't get, touched until much later by politics. And that's, I think, why we witnessed what we did, because the deep state knew that what he was doing was effective, man. It truly was. I watched him grow that company and those debates from, hotel ballrooms for events and 10 to 15 kids around a table to, event arenas and 3,000 to 4,000 kids, at every college we went to. It was insane. Wow.
And I'm glad you said that, bro, because I think what gets lost a little bit when we talk about Charlie, it's so easy to, especially people on the left, to look at him as just a political figure and not appreciate how in the mud Charlie really was, if that makes sense, in the beginning. Like you mentioned, to be in a room with 15 kids, you're not doing that with an agenda. You do that because you actually enjoy what you're doing. And so I think people are starting to realize now, Charlie is kind of like a J. Cole, if you think about it. He's got a cult following, right? People who started following him from the beginning, that like with the J. Cole, with the Drake and Kendrick beef, he makes the apology, and a bunch of people in the hip hop community are like, he's a sellout. But the real fans are like, no, you probably saw this coming because J. Cole is not that kind of guy. He's just not.
Yeah.
You start to see that with Charlie, where it's so easy to just paint him as a political conservative leader of TPUSA and not digest the fact that this man was really a believer. He's really about this life, has a heart for the Father, wanted to lead them to the Messiah, lead them to the faith. And it really, I try not to get emotional, bro. It really breaks my heart to see so many people talk about him the way they are now
Yeah.
and using politics as the weapon of choice, not seeing the big picture. So it brings me some assurance for someone who's been around him to know like Charlie was really like that.
No, and it's one of the most frustrating things to me, and it's one of my largest motivations for coming out, right? Is that the people who are claiming to speak for him are not doing it fully, right? They are watering down everything this man lived for and ultimately died for, which is the ability to speak truth to power, which is the ability to ask questions relentlessly, even when everyone around you is telling you not to, and you know, the world is kind of calling you crazy. I love that video of him where, you know, he labels every conspiracy theory he's ever been involved in. I'm sure he forgot some, right? But like from you know, masks to, I'm forgetting them at this point, what we can play it, but like he was a conspiracy theorist through and through. Epstein, right? The Mossad, all this kind of stuff. And for the people who now sit in his studio and have inherited his platform, and not only that, have made millions off of his death, sit there and tell us not to be conspiracy theorists, to trust the state. It's the most like difficult thing to live through. It's spiritually damning, and it's tough, man. It's why I haven't been sleeping much at night, because it doesn't feel real at times. And it also, I noticed that no one, you know, outside of us in this industry and circle care, right? And that's where I'm like scratching my head. I'm like, yo, we got to get a grip here. We need to pray. We need to like get our stuff together. We need to stop relying on politics in general to fix our problems, because that's why we're losing the spiritual war, because
100%.
demons have manifest, you know, and they are waging the spiritual war via politics. And we are always going to lose that battle if we try and fight them just politically. That's why we have to engage spiritually. But as far as Charlie goes as a person, it's partially, again, like why I spoke out, because watching people like Tyler Boyer especially not come to Candace Owens' defense, one, I think is the most interesting, because he was there in the beginning, right? Like that's the most just
weird,
disgusting betrayal, in my opinion, that's, you know, taken place recently since Charlie. But you know, Blake Neff and Andrew acting like Charlie would not have been friends with Candace because of whatever they're trying to say, when now we know the text that he sent before his death. Right. And also just knowing the kind of person that Charlie was, right? Like, you didn't have to always agree with everything he was saying, or like, again, I left his company and he was still like, dude, you could come back whenever, we're still friends. Like, you know, like it was very nuanced to him. He was a complex individual, and that's how we're supposed to be. We have complex brains. God made us this way for a reason. We're not meant to be just like blind partisan, you know, like tribalist. That's not how we're meant to be at all. Yeah. It really gets back to tribalism and stuff. And, you know, Charlie's biggest thing was, it's not Republicans and Democrats versus Democrats. It's, you know, we the people versus the establishment versus the oligarchs. And now I just feel like we're being walked back to pre-2012 politics, man. It's depressing. You're right. It sucks. It's awful. That's why I'm out here doing what I'm doing, because no one else seems to care that much. And that's like kind of gut wrenching.
Yeah, no, it hurts. And it's important that we do this now, because if you think about it, if we allow these demons, these people, to do what they did to Charlie and it goes unchecked, we're basically saying, hey, you can silence us, right? Whenever you want. And so it is encouraging to see small creators like myself, Jay the Yapper, Didi Got a Podcast, yourself, Brandy Siciliani, Teresa, all these regular people who are just not about to let us decide, or let them decide who takes the mantle, and not do what Charlie wanted us to do, which is like speak out, fight back. But also, what I want to get into as well is the spiritual aspect. My channel, The Unleavened Truth, is about shedding a light on what's going on in the real world, but also to understand the spiritual aspect, the overlay, right? Ephesians 6:12, we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. It's my favorite verse. That's what I live by. So it's important that we highlight the spiritual discernment that we need, right? To really see what these wolves in sheep's clothing are really about. They're masquerading, right? Pretending they're part of the flock. And they're not. They're dissenters. And so I guess we can talk about it a bit right now. But Tyler Boyer really comes to the top of the list, because I came across a video right when I found Didi's channel. And I want to say it was 2015, Trump rally.
I was there.
Oh, wow. Really?
I was there.
Okay. I was going to ask if you were there because in the video, we saw Erica Kirk.
Yeah, she's behind
She's
Trump.
behind Trump,
Yeah.
right? In the back row.
Yeah.
Couple rows down is Tyler Boyer. On the TPUSA website, Tyler's credited for this event as like this being his first big thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what that dynamic was like for you, especially with Erica. Obviously, she's a hot button topic. I think we're both on the same page here. She's sus. Did you get a feel for the Erica we've come to know? Because I didn't know anything about Erica. In fact, I'll share a quick story with you. One of the rallies that I watched, or one of the campus events with Charlie, he was sitting next to a girl. They're both going with the audience. I assumed that was Erica Kirk, right? Because she's giving it to the audience just like Charlie is. They both have this confidence, the swag. Come to find out, it's Riley Gaines.
Oh, okay.
Didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So I assumed that Riley Gaines was Erica.
Yeah.
So when Charlie passed and I actually saw Erica for the first time, I'm like, I've never seen you before, which is kind of weird because how are you with a man like Charlie and no one knows who you are? But now we come to find out who you are and you're nothing like your husband.
Yeah.
That's weird.
And not only that, it's like you're actively trying to hide your past, right?
Yeah.
You're not
Very
being
weird.
transparent about that.
Yep.
And
So,
that's...
Did you have any interactions with her before? With the Erica that we know now? Did she manifest herself in the past?
I can remember one time for certain that I met her. I'm sure there was like another time, but I feel like there were, but the one time I remember the most is when I was at their 9th anniversary party for Turning Point USA, which was also the kind of wedding reception for staff and friends and family of TPUSA. So they kind of merged the events into one. They always had an anniversary party, but that year was the year they got married, and they kind of lumped it into one, and it was right around the same time. So at that event, they had, photos with staff, and, I and my college girlfriend at the time, like, we got up and did a photo with Erica and Charlie, and like that was it, right? That's the one pretty much interaction I've had with her. And I don't think I maybe said congratulations and like that was it, right? Like it was very brief. But it gets to your point, which is no one knew who she was. Even I barely knew who she was. When I found out, like, hey, Charlie's dating this girl, like, whatever, like, this is, it didn't make sense to me, like, as someone who had been there from the beginning. There were a lot of other people who I would have kind of pinned him as wanting to settle down with, but like it felt almost kind of forced, right? And that gets to the deeper kind of thing we're all trying to unpack now, which is how connected were these people? How much was this a setup from the beginning? And it confirmed pretty much my gut feelings from way back then, which is like, yeah, this was just kind of, he was honeypotted, right? And you brought up a great point, which is that, Charlie was the person like leading people to Christ and living out his faith. However, I think as much as that was like his defining quality, it unfortunately was something that may or may not have cost him his life, in my opinion, because I think he was far too trusting of people, right? And didn't have the discernment that we're talking about, which, the average American, generally speaking, has suspended their spiritual discernment and critical thinking skills to influencers and their like local pastor who doesn't really have any ties to the original church that Christ founded. And so with that, we've noticed kind of a lack of, I don't know, quality engagement with the church and an ability to resist government tyranny, to speak truth to power, right? And Charlie was doing that effectively, but he was caught because, from a very early age, he was being funded by the Zionist lobby. And, Tyler Boyer is an outspoken Zionist, and, Erica and Tyler have photos with, the Arizona Israel Committee in 2019 or whatever it is, right? And so I think it's one of those things to where, I was made to feel as someone who knew Charlie from pretty much the beginning. Tyler Boyer has called me the OG. I have the screenshot. I'll send it to you, right? Like someone who goes as far back as that. I was made to feel as an employee that I couldn't go voice my opinions to Charlie. I couldn't go talk to Charlie. It was going to be like an act of subversion and all hell would break loose. That's how manipulative and like the kind of culture that was created internally, right? And so you think about that, and it's just like they're not encouraged to go talk to the man who's leading the company. Like that just doesn't add up, right? Like I understand needing pathways to go through, but like just to be like, no, you can't talk to Charlie. It's gonna ruin everything if you do that. Like that doesn't make sense. When you apply pressure there, and so
that's weird.
Yeah, man, it's it begs a lot of questions, and it's why I've been applying the pressure I have been to these people, right? Is because I don't think any of them are being truthful. I think they all are master manipulators, deceivers, like careerists, and they'll say or do anything to maintain their power.
Yeah.
And it's pretty disgusting, but the Bible tells us about this, right? And and that's why I've been encouraging people, hey, leave your Zionist churches, please. Like please go read your Bibles, like recognize that, Israel is not God's chosen people. That's why Christ came, was to make us one in him. Neither Jew nor Gentile should be separate from Christ, right? And that's foundational. And I think that for the last 60 years, unfortunately, our parents' generation didn't apply pressure and discernment in the way that they should have. And that's how we ended up here, right? And that's what I'm kind of going to write my book on. I'm in the process of it. There's so much going on. I'm trying to get it out. But like, it's such a complex conversation. And that's, again, going back to Charlie, I don't think a lot of his views, that's why we found them out via Candace, because he was caught between a rock and a hard place. His donors did not want him turning, drawing a line in the sand. I've posted that clip, right? He said, I don't care if you hate me. You already hate me, right? I'm the same way. Like to all my former coworkers at TPUSA, I don't care if you hate me. You guys probably already do hate me. Like you guys you're not on the same side we are, right? And Charlie figured that out too. And unfortunately, like it goes back to like anyone who's like, oh, well, Charlie Kirk was super smart. Like you don't, like you're saying he's not intelligent, then that's like, and it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you look at history, you look at Julius Caesar, you look at Jesus Christ, and then Charlie Kirk, some of the most intelligent and most powerful, and even the Son of God was betrayed, right?
Yes.
And can be betrayed for, greed and power and evil,
money,
right? And that's what it comes down to. It's history. It's human history. It always repeats. We're living through it right now. And it's just like a moment for us to pause, reflect, and pray. It's 250 years of America. I feel like we're being given an opportunity on a silver platter to really reflect and decide which way this country's going to go for the next 250 years. And you're right, if they are able to get away with this, like you just said, dude, they've shown us via the Epstein files that they can, traffic and eat kids and get away with it. They've shown us via, abortion laws in this country, they can murder preborn babies and get away with it. Well, with Charlie, they've shown us that they can kill any one of us and get away with it. And that's what they want to do. Like ultimately Charlie said what they did to Trump and Butler, they want to do to you. What they did to Charlie, they want to do to you. We have to keep reminding people of that. Like they want you dead. Your government is not looking out for you, does not have your best interests at heart, right? And that again gets to like the complexity of this whole thing and what Charlie was caught up in the middle of, right? He trusted the people that we put back in DC were going to do the right thing, and they all let him down and betrayed him. And it's everyone from Dan Bongino to Donald Trump to Kash Patel to Pam Bondi to even his own inner circle, Tyler Boyer, Mikey McCoy, Andrew Colvett, who we know sent text to the FBI before the shooting happened, and we still have yet to receive an answer as to why. So I know I'm getting worked up again, but like it's just like it feels like we're living in the Matrix, man. Like truly sometimes, and like it's awful, and it's tough too because like even in my personal life, like people who knew me as the Charlie Kirk kid growing up, like are now like thinking I'm going crazy and insane for caring so much about this, and I'm like guys, we have 3.5 years till 2030. Like we got to get it together. Like I don't know what to tell you guys. And it's like we can't do it alone. You and I can't be the only ones out here talking about this. We all need to be having these conversations, and no one seems to want to have them. And that's the frustrating part, right? And it sucks, dude. It truly sucks. But again, I'll echo and say that like this is the happiest I've been in the last 10 months is speaking out, because I am taking my power back. And that's like what I would encourage people to do too, is like if you're feeling depressed, like speak truth to power. Like it is therapeutic almost. Like I'm standing on the side of truth. That's why I've been very transparent about who I am, my intentions, everything, because it's easy once you start living like that. It's like, that clip I posted the other day of the Louis Vuitton Megyn Kelly. Like she said, we're not in chains anymore when we declare ourselves free from Zionists. Like, and it's true. Like it truly is. Like we're going to figure it out. And I think that, a lot more difficult things are coming. I don't really think a job's going to be the biggest deal in a couple of years, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you. Yeah. And that's kind of my biggest problem with all this is, I'm big on the spiritual aspect of this, because I feel like believers have been getting the runaround and been used for our vote for the last like 30, 40 years. And it's a huge problem, especially when we talk about the blind loyalty to the tiny hats, because it's not biblical. We just talked about that. I actually just did a series, or I did an ancestry test not so long ago, traced my lineage back to the Igbo tribe. The Igbo people in Africa to this day identify as one of the lost tribes of Israel. The more you do research, the more you kind of realize who they are, and specifically who they're not. And these people in the land right now, they're Khazarian Europeans. Like, they have no Semitic ties, no ties to the house of Israel at all. So you're calling us people who actually have ties potentially to the lost tribes, calling them anti-Semitic, but you're not a Semitic people. So, like, what are you talking about? It's a lot. You really kind of hit the nail on the head, bro. If people just read the scripture, we'd understand.
And it's like, so like I doxed myself a little bit. It's already public. I was working for the school superintendent's office, right? And so I was making videos that were being distributed to 7th, 8th, and, all these different grade levels. And it was career awareness, and videos essentially, training them to get them excited about STEM, whatever. The thing that I realized though is like our education system, man, is not where it was when you and I went through school. Right? I don't know how old you are. I'm guessing you're kind of mid 20s, late 30s. Okay, yeah, even
but
still,
it wasn't good back then either.
We have a 10-year difference, right? And so like I've noticed that like, and I've heard because I have friends who are teachers, and it's not good. It's not. It does not bode well for the future of our nation with what we are seeing come out of schools.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that, right? It's because an uneducated population is far easier to control.
Bingo.
Right? If you don't know how to use your brain, then you're gonna trust the narrative, and you're gonna go get vaccinated, and you're gonna wear your mask, and you're gonna, right? So like it goes on. So you see my point. So with that though, right, you're 100% right. We need to be reading our Bibles more. We also need to be like asking questions. It's the Charlie Kirk ask questions. The reason I left my Protestant Pentecostal quote unquote church was because I asked questions about speaking in tongues and no one could really answer me in a direct way. It was always dancing around the question. And I'm like, okay, well, if you guys are going to practice that and none of the early church practices, I'm going to go kind of figure out what the early church actually was. And that's how I landed, kind of pursuing orthodoxy. And and so it's so deceptive, man. And it's frustrating because the Bible tells us the road to hell is paved on good intentions, and I don't think that all of these Christians have bad intentions. I think millions of good-hearted American Christians have been deceived for decades, right? And this goes back to the Protestant Reformation, in my opinion, man. And it's tough. It really is. And it does come down to people like us speaking truth to power, because if not, like, what, are we just going to let evil run the world? We already know it does. And that's the thing. We're not made for this world. Like, we know this, this world is not ours to inherit. Therefore, when we are called to speak truth to power, when we feel as though there is injustice happening, tyranny, whatever, like it is our biblical duty to respond to that call, right? And that's what frustrates me, is that we're seeing so many quote unquote Christians not do that and get in line when Jesus Christ of all people was the one who came in and flipped tables. Like, I'm.
And if you just read Christ's words, just Christ's words from the New Testament, from the Gospels, he was the original conspiracy theorist.
Yep.
He's flipping tables. He's calling the Pharisees the synagogue of Satan. He's healing on the Sabbath.
Yep.
All right. He's doing all these things that are the opposite.
Antithetical?
The antithesis, yes, of what the establishment was trying to put into place. Right.
Yep.
Pharisees are all about the Mosaic law and following the law. And Messiah's like, it doesn't matter if you have the wrong heart posture. Doesn't matter you have the 10 commandments if they're not hung on love thy neighbor and love the Lord your God with all your heart. So if you just read Christ's words, you would understand what this fight's about. It's not flesh and blood.
Yeah.
The enemy's number one weapon is not drugs. It's not guns. It's none of that. It's deception, right? And it's ancient. It goes back to Genesis 3 in the garden. He beguiled the woman. Beguiled means to trick. That's his motive, deception, right? He's not going to deceive you with just outright lies. He's going to give you half-truths. He didn't tell Eve, oh, God didn't say any of this. He asked her, did God say that? And that little bit of doubt, right? Did he say that? Nah, I got you. Here's what he actually said, right? So here we are. Here, history's kind of repeating itself. So that's kind of my passion, which is why I was excited to talk to you, because I knew you were a believer. I could tell when you mentioned you're on Blackline, you mentioned the synagogue of Satan, and I was like, I don't know many believers who even know what that is, and you're mentioning it in passing. So he knows what he's talking about. And I was excited to talk to you because of that. Because like I said, this is a big part of this, Even a lot of creatives who are investigating this, it's a layer they're not really tapping into, if that makes sense to you.
I was really happy when you did reach out to me because, again, the spiritual aspect is the thing I care more about, arguably, than the political or even the worldly. I want to make this very clear. I don't care what happens to Tyler Robinson. I could give less of a damn. What I care about is that justice is preserved, maintained, and carried out, and not influenced, tainted by quote unquote, influencers, whatever,
Deep
right?
State, whoever.
Whatever happens, we need to let justice run its course. That is what this country's built on, right? And that's what I keep going back to. And if you look at Kyle Rittenhouse as the most recent kind of comparison, granted the circumstances are slightly different. You have two young men who allegedly killed somebody. And in both cases, the media machine worked overtime to label both of them guilty, right? Especially with Kyle Rittenhouse, we saw major news outlets all across the board say, this is the man who killed blah, blah, blah. And again, that's like deciding a verdict before it's been put out. You have to use allegedly. That's good journalism, right? Yep. And that's why I keep calling out Blake Neff and Andrew Colvett. It's like, they're just sloppy journalists, and it's intentional. But the point being, the precedent is set to where, if Tyler Rittenhouse
and Kyle
Robinson and Tyler Rittenhouse. Yeah. Oh my God. Cut. As I was saying, no, the legal precedent is set, and it's funny because it was set by the same people who we're now seeing launch a media kind of attack on Tyler Robinson, right? And so if Tyler Robinson is found guilty, if Tyler Robinson is found not guilty, then he has kind of the legal precedent to sue every conservative influencer who's labeled him guilty for defamation, because that is what they encouraged Kyle Rittenhouse to do, and that's exactly what he did. Look at Nick Sandmann, look at the McCloskeys, all of these different conservatives throughout the years who were falsely accused and labeled in the media as being guilty before, they ever faced a jury. We're kind of seeing that play out here, but it's now conservatives who are the ones waging the war on justice when previously it was liberals, right? And so that's why for me, I don't really care about the political anymore. Like I saw what happened when Charlie tried to juggle the political and the spiritual, and I think that if he had just, drawn a line in the sand back in 2023, which is where this all began,
deep,
I think that we'd be in a different place today. But it comes, it gets to that deeper question of like deception, right? Like we as humans like to feel like we can control things. We like to feel like we can have an influence, and that gets to voting being a scam. That gets to the two-party system being a scam when it's all one Zionist uniparty. But again, as Christians, I'm not encouraging us to opt out necessarily. What I am encouraging us to do though is stop focusing on the national as much. Focus more on your local. Go get involved in your church. Figure out what's going on in your local communities before you start caring a lot about the national, I guess is what I would say. And and I even need to be doing that more too, right? I'm not sitting up here moral positioning as holier than thou. I am very guilty of it myself, right? And that's something that I always try and make sure of. It's like that's what pisses me off about some of these people. It's like, dude, I know you're not what you're claiming to be, right? And that's never what I want to come off as. Right? I'm not perfect. I don't ever claim to be, right? I'm a broken sinner, and I need Jesus Christ every day of my life. That's why I'm a Christian. So it's tough, right? And I think that kind of raw authenticity, that brutal honesty that I don't know, just being sober-minded as Christians is what we need to have more of. Like, we should expect, unfortunately, the things, like what happened to Charlie to happen to more of us. Like Christians being martyred is par for the course throughout human history. We should not be surprised when these things happen. It's why when I spoke out and 2 weeks to the day got fired, I wasn't surprised. I was expectant of it. Because again, like we are told to expect these things. We're not meant to inherit this world. It's not ours. We can't take any of this stuff with us. So we may as well have fun while we're here and see what kind of a mark we can leave, not for us, not for a political sake, but ultimately for Christ's sake, right? And I think that's what Charlie did. And what frustrates me the most is watching how they immediately tried to co-opt it and walk it back to Israel and make Charlie seem like this mass Zionist when, again, the clips exist as far back as 2023. I pulled them. They're on my Twitter. Like, Media Matters is the only place you can find them today, conveniently enough, because the Charlie Kirk Show does not want them being released and people listening to them. In 2023, he was telling cultural Jews to draw a line in the sand. He was like saying, "I don't care if you hate me. I already know you hate me." Ben Domenech, who now conveniently works at the Daily Wire, called for Charlie Kirk's removal from TPUSA due to anti-Semitism, saying that there would be an anti-Semitism problem in future elections if Charlie isn't dealt with, right? And then just, conveniently 2 years later, he's taken out, right? And so to watch them immediately try to label Charlie a Zionist when I was on campus with this man every day, watching him debate students younger than me on the Israel issue, I know for a fact Charlie had realized this cat was not going to be put back in the bag and he was going to have to confront it. And we saw him do that. Unfortunately, it cost him his life, right? But that's where more of us need to be brutally honest about these sorts of things, because the more of us that are just saying these things calmly, intellectually, not brazenly, not brashly in a way that's going to get us seen like labeled extremists, right? But, like you said, like you heard me talking about the synagogue of Satan, and now we're having a very productive conversation. The more that happens, I think the further we'll kind of get this ball across to the finish line, hopefully. But again, we should not expect anything at the same time, because we're told that we can't inherit any of this, and it's Christ. It's in Christ's hands ultimately.
Yeah. Yep. I couldn't agree with you more, bro. And it actually is a good segue into the case and how it's relevant spiritually, because one of the things that still doesn't sit right with me is the contrast that we're seeing with Erica Kirk when it comes to the spiritual disconnect that she has with Charlie. Primarily, the fact that she is now the CEO of TPUSA. One of the things that I was being convicted of right before Charlie passed, I want to say it was like 2 weeks before he passed, I'm watching a video of him on campus. He's talking to the kids about how he believes that the woman shouldn't have to work in the relationship and that she should be able to stay and run the household while the man goes out and provides. And the thing that stuck out to me to this day, still kind of like in the back of my head, is when he said it's biblical, right? It's biblical for the man to provide for his wife. And I look at scripture and he's absolutely right. Right. And so to see Erica pivot and do the opposite of that, I'm thinking about Charlie's kids, right? And Charlie's gone. And now the kids are watching their mom run this company, a multi-billion-dollar company, and she's not at home doing what Charlie wanted her to do. But TPUSA is saying, no, this is what Charlie wanted, for her to be the face of TPUSA. How? That doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't align to me. It's one of those things that, and if you want to speak to this, that's fine. It's one of those breadcrumbs that, like, there's clearly a disconnect spiritually. Either Charlie is a fraud, okay? And that goes back to everyone saying he's a Freemason, all these different things, whatever. You can have it. I'll give it to you. Charlie's a Freemason. Candace too. Everybody. Whatever. But what he said, he stood on. And now that he's not here, the others who are left behind, like your wife, are completely tarnishing the things that he stood on. And it's weird to me. It's something I can't seem to reconcile.
No, it's that's why I'm calling them demons, to be quite frank with you, because it's the only explanation to me, right? There is no human explanation for this level of betrayal. It can only be explained by the spiritual. And because it cuts to such a deep level, there's arguments that can be made that the events of 9/10 were a mass spiritual event. You know, I don't want to use the term energy harvesting because I don't really like that and it doesn't feel the most biblical, but like you kind of get to what I'm hinting at, right? And like there was an exchange made with, again, forces of not human, like these are not forces of flesh and blood that we are waging against, right? And I feel like an exchange was made that day. I don't know what. I can't know, right? I'm not God. I'm not anything like that. I'm just hypothesizing as a believer here. But, you know, generally speaking, I'm 27 years old. I know I haven't lived a super long life, but like having lived through decent amounts of social chaos, George Floyd, COVID, Stop the Steal, January 6th, whatever the case may be, this one feels fundamentally different to me for multiple reasons. One, there's like a segment of the population that just couldn't care less about it. True. and doesn't know, doesn't care, which, you know, is kind of fine. But That's I feel like JFK wise, the impact was far more long lasting, I guess, than Charlie's. Like Charlie's, you know, they hit it hard. They had the memorial. Don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know, man. I feel like the country really mourned JFK for a while. And there's, you know, some reason for that. He was a presidential candidate. He was a president, whatever. But, you know, and Charlie was hopefully going to run for president one day. We never know. But, you know, the level is different. I guess that potentially explains it. However, it was the first successful assassination we've had in decades, right? And so for me, I felt like that would garnish a little bit more, I don't know, of a response. And it gets to another point, which I keep making, is that if the left killed Charlie Kirk, right, if that's the truth of what happened, then why did the administration not go just full fascist, quasi-fascist in the weeks after Charlie said? They had every excuse under the sun to. Their you know, pony boy who got them elected, you know, was just taken out by their enemy, quote unquote. Dude, go arrest every leftist podcaster across the country and make a point that you are, you know, punishing the left if that's what you wanted us to believe. That didn't happen. They invited Jack Posobiec to the White House to have a roundtable on Antifa, labeled them a terrorist group, and they were like, all right, like, we're done. Like, that's it. We're going to go launch a war in Iran now. Yeah. We're not going to give you the truth on the Epstein files. And if you say anything about it, you're a communist and you're a terrorist. And so again, we can all like realize how insane that is. But it gets to the deeper point of like, how are all of these people able to betray not only Charlie, but all of us, the average citizen, right? Like, we, the people, have to remind the government that they work for us. You know, we do not work for them. Like, and it's I don't know, man. It's so fundamentally, there's so many biblical parallels here. I've made the point that, like, dude, Christ only had to worry about Judas, like arguably speaking, betraying him. Charlie, like, everyone in this movement betrayed this man, dude. Like, only the people being cast aside, you know, such as Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, the same names I've listed, even as small as myself, like, we're the only people who really fundamentally believed Charlie, and obviously the thousands of us who are standing on this side of truth. But like, from an institutional level, man, it really seems like they all made a deal with the devil. Like, it's awful.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I'm curious what you think about what I call the Candace Owens effect, because I'll be honest with you, I go back and forth with Candace. Backstory. Prior to COVID and the George Floyd situation, I would be probably what you would consider like a leftist. I was very scorned against the Republican Party since 9/11 for obvious reason. And had I voted in 2008, probably would have voted for Obama. Came to my senses later, but at the time, that's where I was at. I probably would have voted for him back then. But when George Floyd happened, me and my white fiance, we were in the streets protesting, making a ruckus, you know, joining everybody else. And then you kind of parrot what you've been taught, because both my parents were historically Democrat. It's very cultural for us. Entire family is Democrat. So you kind of catch yourself parroting all those things that you grew up around. You know what I mean? And I'm starting to, I guess, 2021, 22, around COVID, that's when I was like, all right, there's something wrong. I knew COVID was a sham.
Yeah.
I tried my hardest to kind of put my parents on game. My dad wasn't hearing it, got vaccinated. I told my fiance like 6 months he will not be here. Almost to the day he passed away. Yeah, 6 months later. And it changed me, bro. It really did. One of the things that it changed in a good way is I started to open myself up to people that I previously didn't listen to, like the Charlies and the Candaces of the world.
Nice.
Yeah, I couldn't stand either of them. So I go back and I'm like, wow, these people are amazing, right? Like, why am I listening to Joy Reid tell me not to listen to Candace Owens? Who are you? You know?
Yeah.
So I give Candace the benefit of the doubt, like I did Charlie.
Right.
And I also noticed the dynamic between them two. And maybe you can speak to this. If I had to guess who was more in love, Candace and Charlie or Erica and Charlie, I would say Candace and Charlie. Their dynamic is the relationship. It was very resembles me and my girl. She's my best friend. We laugh. We do everything together. I see that with Candace and Charlie. I never really seen that with Erica and Charlie. Even when they were on the Charlie Kirk Show together. It's just not the same. It's not the same dynamic. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are, because with Candace, I guess the big criticism is, I get that you're a podcaster. I get that you have a job to do. And to her defense, she does have to do it meticulously, right? She's a black woman in a white male space. So I get that perspective. However, it does feel like she's kind of, and there's some credence here to people who think that, not to say she's in on it, that's too far, but like, is she playing a role of a dissenter versus actually being one? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It was one of those things that like I wasn't 100% on Team Candace from the jump of this, right? Like I said from the beginning, I wanted to trust that, what the government was telling us was true, as we all like to be hopeful, like naively. And, at the time, I was very kind of like skeptical of the way she was going about things, right? I thought that it was a little aggressive at first. I thought it was a little intense. But also, I understood why, right? And as someone who witnessed their dynamic at times up close, it like was something that to me made sense. I looked at who Charlie was, I looked at who Candace was, and I kind of flipped the story and I was like, wait a minute, let's say hypothetically Candace was out speaking and she died mysteriously in a public assassination, and for whatever reason half the American population thought that the Daily Wire had something to do with it, right? I'm just a hypothetical situation here. Do you not think that Charlie Kirk would not leave, like would leave no stone unturned trying to get to the bottom of what happened to his friend? I think the answer is undoubtedly yes, right? And so when we look at older clips of Charlie speaking specifically about conspiracy theories and challenging power, specifically the JFK shooting, I mean, he was even willing to platform Israel's involvement, in that. But also, he was more focused on the questions of who benefited the most from JFK's assassination, who wanted JFK dead the most, right? And emphasized multiple times that, this we're all smarter to kind of look at the facts of this case and realize that this wasn't just some lone shooter acting alone, right? And even with the JFK files, that's even more emphasized today. So I think to answer your question, one, I also kind of felt the way that you did, right? I questioned Erica heavily from the jump. It never made sense to me. I didn't see them display much love, I guess, in a way that like I've seen it displayed, right? You mentioned you and your wife. I've never seen you guys together, but like I can imagine what you're referring to, right? And it's the way that kind of Charlie and Candace acted occasionally in the videos we've seen. And it was something that like as like, a fanboy of Charlie, I was kind of like hoping that would happen. Yeah, like truly, like complete honesty, I was kind of rooting for that outcome. Yeah. Do I think that like what she's doing today is because that didn't happen? No. And I think that anyone who throws that accusation at Candace is
honestly
It's
operating from like
lazy.
a 7th grade mindset. Like,
Yes.
dude, we are all adults here. We are all complex individuals. We can have feelings for people that can, vary. And like, again, I say I love Charlie Kirk in a fraternal sense, as like a brother, right? Because we went through this culture war together when it wasn't what it is today, right? And so I think that like, even love is so misconstrued these days, and people love to just like slap a label on things and say, oh, well, if you have a crush on this, like, it's just so stupid. Like, we're complex human beings. We're allowed to feel things for people. And I think that what we've seen Candace display is brotherly love in the sense that like as a Christian brother and sister should, right? And that's what makes the contrast to Erica's actions and her rhetoric so stark. And it's like, and I posted a video of some random widow that I got on my Instagram feed the other night. And it's like, she's just recounting a story of her husband that she misses. And it's like, if we had seen Erica just be a human being once, right, and not try and be someone she isn't, which is this CEO fighter figure, because she's not, right? We probably would all be a lot more forgiving of her. That's why I waited 10 months, because I really wanted to trust, and then I saw what happened at the Women's Leadership Summit, and I was like, nope, this ain't it, Chief. I gotta throw my hat in the ring and speak some truth to power here, as my boy did, as my boy taught me for 10 years, because you people are not doing it. You people are bowing to the establishment, and you're selling out conservative Christians and making them think like you're making America great again, and you're not. So,
yes, and you're not. Yep. And I think with Candace and Charlie, it could be summed up as simple as they have a trauma bond, right? If you think about what they've had to go through in politics, the smearing. And again, I mentioned my fiance's white. I can't tell you the amount of vitriol I get from the Black community. I'm a sellout, Uncle Tom, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just a regular dude, right? Just commenting on Facebook and Twitter.
Right.
Candace is it. So like, imagine what I'm going through times 150. You know what I mean? And Charlie is going through the same similar thing. That alone will bring two people together in a way that people just can't understand. You know what I mean?
No, seriously, it builds like a professional friendship, and almost like you become comrades, like a camaraderie, right? They were the only people in each other's corner for years, essentially, right? And that's what frustrates me the most when I watch people like Blake Neff and Andrew Colvett lie on Candace's name, lie on Charlie's name, the kind of complex individual Charlie was, the kind of friendships Charlie would maintain. It's frustrating and it's demonic, because it's not the truth. You guys are claiming to be Christians and you're not speaking the truth. You're actually lying on someone who's acting the most Christian to their Christian brother who was martyred publicly, as you all try and hide from questions, run from accountability, right? As the suspicions begin to pile up, you're not being transparent. That's not what an innocent group or person does typically. We'll wait to see what ends up happening here. But generally speaking, it's, dude, they built this movement together. Like, it was those two. Dude, like Andrew Colvett was interning for Tucker Carlson in 2019 when Charlie and Candace had become who they were. You know what I mean? And now they're the ones inheriting the platform and speaking for Charlie. It's the biggest load of baloney I've ever lived through.
It's disrespectful, bro.
There's no words for it, dude. It leaves me speechless. Because I don't know what to say. Like, it's frustrating, man. Because Charlie and Candace were in it together. And for whatever reasons, Charlie separated from her corporately. To think that they would not still be friends after that is the most insane thing I've ever heard. And we're now seeing that play out in real time.
Yeah. And if you think about it, Candace really took that step of anti-tiny hats before Charlie did, right? So like, from Charlie's perspective, he really had no choice but to just like publicly separate. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even though I kind of feel you, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
he was there with,
but he can't.
He was there with Kanye and Candace in 2018, right? And then
So like he gets it.
And then you see the 2023 stuff with Elon Musk where, you know, he got labeled an anti-Semite. Charlie came to defend Elon. And now we have Elon Musk just lying about Zionism and the history of our world on Twitter every day. It's insane what's happening. It's revisionist. These people are Bolsheviks. They're not Christian. They're not conservative. They're not patriots. They do not love this country. They want to extract as much money from you as they can before they kill you. And it's as simple as that. And we just need to not take these people seriously. Their credibility is in the dumpster. And when people like us, like when we finally get in charge, dude, it's going to be a different show. Hopefully, like these people can't live forever. And, you know, it's just one of those things where we have to be the ones to kind of push these thoughts into the forefront. You know, Charlie always said his death was going to be a turning point, and I think that the turning point that you know Erica Kirk and everyone else are trying to make it into is nothing close to what it actually is you know ordained from God to be, and we're seeing that slowly. But again, God's timing is very different than ours. You know, he you know, 7 days for him is a lot longer for us. So it's one of those things where we can't expect things to change immediately. We need to be sober-minded about the kind of forces we're fighting against and expect more things to happen, but also be hopeful and trust in Christ, because we know that the battle is won in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think, to your point, what you said about timing, like to me, time is divine because humans are all bound by it, right? God's not. So from a timing standpoint, it's like we'll never understand, we'll never fully get the clarity we want from our perspective, but it'll come, you know? Truth always prevails. It'll come. I know we talked a lot about the spiritual aspect, which was kind of the bulk of what I wanted to talk about, but I do want to ask you a little bit more about the case itself, because you have such a unique perspective. We've seen this stuff with Tyler Robinson. I did a video months ago about how when they were showing us all the footage and like the person had 3 outfits on, you know, like from the beginning, it never felt like Tyler Robinson had anything to do with this. But since that time, we've had, you know, Candace expounding upon the exploding mic theory, the stuff with Erica Kirk, Jack Posobiec and Benny Johnson lying at the courthouse. My question to you is, has there been anything? Obviously, and I think you mentioned this before, like you felt like in the right in the beginning, something's off. And I told my girl immediately, like the whole lone shooter story, like we're not entertaining that whatsoever. Like there's no chance. I guarantee you that's what they're going to come with, right? And it's just not feasible. It's not possible. But it does take tangible evidence and context to actually get to that point and stand on it. Was there anything you saw from that moment till now that was like, that's it for me? That's my thing. I can't get past. That's the lie for me. Was there any one specific thing, or was it a collection of things?
It was a slow collection, but I think it started as early as, I'll be honest, Charlie's memorial, right? Sitting in the crowd, seeing Erica Kirk take the stage.
You were there.
I was on the floor. Hearing her say, "I forgive that young man," or whatever her words were.
I forgive him.
My jaw was like damn near on the floor, dude.
I
was like,
it.
there's no way that she just said that. As a like, I get the angle she's trying to spin, like the forgiving Christian. Like I get that. As a Christian, you are sentencing a young man to death before a jury has made a verdict. That is the most evil thing that I've ever witnessed in my life. And then it was sold as loving and Christian and forgiving. I'm like, by saying I forgive Tyler Robinson, you are indirectly labeling him guilty and he needs to be put to death, because that to me was like, oh, this ship is burning, and it's burning fast, and this is going to change rapidly. And we saw that happen, right? And it gets me to my other point, which is 2 to 3 months later, Candace is applying pressure, right? And what do we see? We see Erica Kirk get in an all black outfit and take the camera and talk down to Candace in a way that is the most just not Christian at all, not like
At all.
How can you forgive the man who put a bullet allegedly in your husband's throat, but then tell one of your husband's best friends to stop asking questions when, as a Christian, we believe in getting to the truth?
No matter what.
It's so blatantly disrespectful, so blatantly anti-Christian, so blatant. I can't believe more people aren't doing what I'm doing. And that's where it's also like, I think something happened that day, like spiritually, man, where it's just like people's blinders are on, and like whatever happens, dude, like who cares? Like, I don't know. But that was the moment for me. Like, truly, I don't think people really realize that, right? That by forgiving him, you're telling the court of public opinion he's guilty. And that to me was like, whoa, we're skipping like 50 steps here. Back it up, Erica. Pause. Like
That's interesting you say that, because we've been talking this whole time about the spiritual aspect, obviously, and any mainstream Western American Christian, right, heard that message and jumped all over it, right? Yeah. But it, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to toot my own spiritual horn, but to me, it does take discernment to really see what that is. It's deception. Because like you just said, you're making this man guilty before he's been tried by his peers. And we know, obviously, our standard for justice and truth is higher than American courts, right? But we still have to let that play out, if that makes sense. We can't just ignore that because we have a kingdom calling. So I do find that very fascinating that was the linchpin for you. And if I was the exact same way, I had started my TikTok right alongside my YouTube channel. I had put out a short. Didn't really think too much of it, but it went super viral. I was just comparing Erica to Vanessa Bryant, Kobe's wife.
Okay.
And obviously, if you watch Kobe's or watch Vanessa at his memorial, completely different behavior.
Yeah.
But the bigger thing is, after the memorial, there's no Vanessa ever, right? People in the comments were telling me, oh, she's dating, and this is like, yeah, but I didn't know that because she's minding her business.
She's not making it public. Yeah, she's not putting it in everybody's face. Exactly.
She's living her life. And then you look at Erica, and she's got glitter on. And it's like,
dude, not even that, bro. The casket video. The casket video, for me, I was like, just
bruh.
Pause. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
Like,
what is going on? Like, stop. Just, as Erica said, stop. Right. What are we doing here? Like, that to me, I was like, this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it. But
and now you got the court video of her hanging out the SUV with the necklace doing the Dave Chappelle. It's like, what are you doing,
I want to get to another point really quick, which is like being there, and I've reflected on this a little bit recently. That memorial was very symbolic, I think, in ways that people don't realize. It was like the first time, I think, in a long time that like the entire cabinet was in a room, like the same space, right? Like the amount of security that went into that event was insane, right? Especially after Butler and everything else. Getting in was awful. It was miserable. Like the whole event was a lockdown. Getting out was awful. That aside, it almost felt like the kickoff of the new American empire. And what I mean by that is we watched the deep state celebrate that day. As much as we were mourning Charlie, I think we, oddly enough, watched the deep state kind of just kick their feet up and be like, yep, we're good. We don't have to worry anymore. And I wouldn't have said that if, again, we did the things that Donald Trump and Charlie kind of ran on, which was, truth on the Epstein files, not going to a new war in Iran, and Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino uprooting the deep state. No, that didn't happen.
Nope.
They all just kind of clicked their heels and got in line and said all the right things and
Yeah.
you know, dabbed their tears. And that to me felt like, and then you have the UFC fight shortly thereafter, right? Where Turning Point USA is sponsoring an event with Meta and Bud Light, two companies which, if you go back 2-3 years ago, again, Kid Rock was shooting up cases of Bud Light and Meta was censoring everything Charlie Kirk said about COVID, right? These companies we were at war with as conservatives, not even 5 years ago. Now that they are in line with the establishment, oh, well, we're all on the same team. It's one big happy party.
Yeah,
so like,
it's all
that's what I
good.
mean, right? Two-party system, the idea that we have a say or that democracy exists, I think is very rapidly dying, right? In this new age we're entering. And that memorial specifically, I think people will look back on as like the first time the new American empire kind of like dusted their gloves off and we're like, yeah, no, we're here for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, you posted, I don't know if it's something you made, but you posted Vance Kirk 2028.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first things that I said back in October in one of my videos. This thing they're doing is to set up a Vance Kirk ticket in 2028. I'm so certain of it, right? I think, and I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if Charlie would have ran for office, but had he ran, he would have won by a landslide. Like,
of course.
he would have made Trump's win look ridiculous.
Of course.
Because the one thing that Trump never got was the vote of people like myself who voted based on character, right? I voted for Trump out of necessity in 2024.
Yeah. That's what we all did because we were sold that this was this election is going to be the fate of our country. And that's where I've been applying pressure to Tyler, specifically Tyler Boyer, because, as the COO of Turning Point Action, he's trying to rile up the right for 2028 and the midterms. And it's like, brother, you guys have a direct line to Donald J. Trump. Can we hold him accountable here on anything, please? And the answer is clearly no. The answer is no, right? Because I've made this point on other podcasts. I'm going to make it here again, so your audience hears it. If we fixed everything, if Donald Trump came in and fixed everything and got this country back on track and uprooted the deep state and kicked out all the illegal, like if everything happened, right? If God kind of performed a miracle and everything happened as it was intended, all these people would be out of jobs. Jack Posobiec would have nothing to talk about. CNN would have to shut down all the news, because the country would be operating the way it should be, right? We have been subverted for over 60 years, and the system that has subverted us is the same system profiting off of us. And if we were to take that and fix it as the people, everyone who's attached to that system, the same system that betrayed Charlie Kirk, would have to go kick rocks and get a new job, right? And that is, I think, the deeper point. Greed is the motivation for almost every betrayal, right? We know that, historically speaking. And greed and power. And so, it gets to who had the most to lose if Charlie was to win. Everyone who was attached to that Zionist deep state that is still propping up the lies of the last 60 years, man. Like, it's so transparent that once you see it and say it like it is, no one can really counter you, and it's pretty hard to unsee, and then you don't really care about anything else because it's like, why would I when that is happening? Like, if they can do that to Charlie, like, why would I go vote again? Like, I need Tyler Boyer to answer me that question. Why would I ever vote for a Republican again when you have the majority right now? You have Trump, you have all the power. The left killed Charlie Kirk, and y'all did nothing about it, and now you want us to vote for you again? No, GFYS, bro. Like, no, I know we're gonna go do our own thing. I'm gonna back Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker on this one. Sorry. Like, y'all dropped the ball harder than ever. You had the mandate. Then you got another one when Charlie died. You had two mandates and you still fumbled the ball. Like, I just...
And that's a good point too, because I don't think the dissenters, the people who are pro Tyler, I don't think they realize how bad TPUSA fumbled the bag here. We're talking about 2024, Trump wins by a landslide, right? So the Republican Party is up here. Then you got people like Charlie and Candace who are taking that high to a new level, right? And then Charlie passes, and you have this entire movement that's just clamoring, waiting for somebody to take the mantle. And Erica Kirk steps in, and Eric, you're like, okay, this is it. And then, I don't know, 48, 72 hours later, she ruins it. Like, it's cooked. So
it's-
I do think, you know, we're looking at a dramatic political change, so to speak, and I'm fearful. I'm concerned that maybe this pushes people to the left. Maybe it pushes people to the middle, but that middle candidate is more left leaning than we'd really like them to be.
Yeah, that's
they're just playing a role to make it seem like they're on our side.
That's the trick, right? And that's where it's you can never know until you give them that power, and then it's like the Trump thing. Like we all got conned twice, some of us 3 times. It's like we should all be smarter than that. But that's the way the world works. That's the way politics works, and again, that's like where I go back to, as Christians, like we should be involved. We should, speak truth to power, but we should also not let it consume our lives. And we should instead let the church consume our lives and let Christ consume our lives and have our attention be spent there. And again, I think we would not have as many problems here culturally if far more Americans prioritize their spiritual lives over their political ones or their social lives, like whatever the case may be. So I think all of this is just a result of that ultimately at the end of the day. But you're right. Sure. Like it's tough. The movement's in a tough place, but that's where it's like, I don't even know if the movement was real. Like I feel like it was all just this massive psyop deception. And, it is fake. What it is. We're kind of just caught here. We got to figure it out. Yeah. It's what we decide in the next decade will determine the future of this nation, though, for the next 250 years. I'm almost certain of that, right? And that's why it's so important, because 2030 is right around the corner and they have a plan. They've told us multiple times they want to wipe out a large percentage of our population. So I don't know what it's going to take for people to start believing that, right? It's like the conspiracy theory thing is only a conspiracy theory until it's not. Right. And that's, again, conspiracy theorists have a pretty damn good track record, especially as of late.
We do.
So,
we're on a roll.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what people like. I don't know why you would bet against conspiracy theorists in 2026, right. But like, hey, you know what? I'm a gambler, so like I get it. But
that's easy money,
you're not placing the right bets, bro. Yes. Like, come on, you're missing out on like a 20x profit here. Like, come on.
Yeah. Easy bread. That's so funny. I appreciate you doing this, brother. I do want to end with a couple questions for you. I think it's important that we don't just talk about these things, but actually have a plan of action going forward. If you could encourage myself, yourself, others watching, others who are just regular people, don't have a platform, who aren't as vocal, what would be your advice going forward? We talked a bit about just having the conversations. Is there anything practical that you would say, let's do more of this?
Yeah, I think,
if that makes sense.
No, I think generally speaking, right, and this was even something that I had to overcome, right? I want to be very transparent, didn't want to do this. I never wanted to be in front of a mic. I was always the photographer, videographer behind the mic for a reason, because I liked being in the shadows. I liked observing. I liked capturing the shot, right? I decided to speak out when I did, and I happened to accumulate a relatively small following after that, right? And so that's a pretty unique case, right? I'm not saying that everyone who decides to randomly speak out is going to get that, but what I would encourage people to do is like, what I'm doing is a very specific kind of focused practice of something that can be done across the board, right? Scale and industry wide. And I think that we as Christians especially need to get more comfortable in conflict, right? Christians, I noticed this growing up. I didn't become a Christian until I was 16, right? My mom kind of abandoned us, drugs, alcohol, passed away when I was 24. Like that pushed me into the church, right? Sure. And that's how I found Christ. And so when I got plugged into evangelical circles, I was like, yeah, this is all nice and stuff, but like it's almost too nice, right? And I don't feel like there's any seriousness. There's no structure. It's just kind of like all emotional. It's all what you feel. We just want to love people, and like we don't want to offend anyone. God forbid we offend anyone. And it's like Jesus Christ was the one who was the chief offender. He was happy to offend people because he was speaking the truth.
So offensive.
Right? And that's what it comes down to. It's like, I want Christians to not be afraid of being labeled offensive. I want Christians to not be afraid of being labeled anti-Semitic, because again, Jesus Christ was killed after immense pressure from AI pack. Like truly, like it's a joke, but it's also the truth, right? To some extent, like the Pharisees pressured the Romans into killing Christ. And so Judeo-Christianity is a lie. It is ultimately deception from Satan, and we need to be more comfortable speaking these truths openly to our brothers and sisters in Christ. And if not, like recognize that the only person that's missing out on that is them and yourself, right? And like, I can speak this to you as much as I can, but it's up to you to then take that and spread that message, right? Like, I am but one person, and it needs to spread like a fire. And we need to practice this. You know, I'm doing it on a large scale. I'm calling out these big people because I have personal relationships with them, and I feel like it's valuable. I'm not expecting to get anywhere with it, though, right? I send out tweets every day knowing I'm not going to get a response back because it's the principle of the matter, right?
Sure.
And silence
Sure.
speaks volumes sometimes as well. So,
True.
you know, whatever that looks like for you, you know, get comfortable in that discomfort as Christians. You know, we are not, you know, we're not made for this world. We're temporal beings. We are told that we will be persecuted, right? If you're not being persecuted as a Christian, I feel like you're almost doing something wrong. And it gets to the deeper point of like this, what Erica and Turning Point USA and Turning Point Faith have become is not, you know, an offensive Christian, like, truth forward organization. It's not. It's masquerading as a almost a cult, and it's weird. And you know, this is just an indication though of the multitude of deceptions that we the people have been subject to over the years, right? I think back to kind of the tent revivals that took place throughout, like, was it the 60s, or I might be wrong there, but like, you know, the baptism movements that took place, like things that were sold as revivals, I'm not too certain were, so to speak, you know. And like, as I've gotten deeper into Orthodox history and I've learned kind of the prediction for the future, it seems to be kind of, we're going down that path. So like, I don't know, I still need to get deeper in my faith there. I still need to convert and go through the catechumen process. Like, I'm not speaking at this as an expert here, but I would just encourage people to, like, I don't know, challenge the norm, speak truth to power as much as you can, even in your own local life, and recognize that, like, although evil surrounds us, like, there is still goodness present, and ultimately we know that, like, whatever we're subject to here is a result of what happened thousands of years ago, and it's because of the cross, and that's why we do what we do, and it's up to us to live that out. And I don't know, hopefully that's enough.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, man. I completely agree with you. We are living in the middle of a spiritual war.
Yeah.
We're born into it. It's an ancient conflict. It doesn't matter what you think about it. You have to fight. You're in the middle of a fight.
And I mean,
Doesn't
how
matter your
lucky are
opinion,
we too?
period.
Like, to get to live through a time such as this. It's
Yeah,
it's incredible.
seriously.
I mean, you
It's a
think about
blessing.
the access to information we have. Yeah, and I was talking to my dad about it the other day, and I was like, it's a pro and a con, because the access to disinformation and propaganda is just as prevalent, right? And that's where
Yep.
it comes
True.
down to people such as us. And you mentioned something earlier that I'm going to kind of circle back to here in the end. It's like, we are kind of witnessing, in the same way we saw kind of the ringing in of the new American empire, in my opinion, as I called it at that memorial. I think in the last 10 months, we've kind of seen this new class, this new wave of independent journalism kind of propping itself up, right? People from their bedrooms, like you and I, just speaking truth to power, turning on a camera, connecting to the internet, and going live. It's the Charlie Kirk kind of method, dumbed down and spread out in smaller scales. And we're seeing the results of that in real time, right? And as Charlie said with Kyle Rittenhouse, you know, we saw that media machine back in 2021 had some cracks in it, had some faults. We're seeing those same faults show themselves now in 2026, right? And I really do think that they overplayed their hand hard on this. I think that, like anything, their hubris got the best of them. And again, history tells us that that's how it works, right? We have to look at history. We have to read our Bibles. These things should not surprise us, and we should expect things to get worse before they get better, unfortunately. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but also I just want you guys, as my brothers and sisters in Christ, to be aware of what's coming, to be sober-minded about it, and to be able to prepare, so that way, when and if it does happen, you're not caught off guard.
Yep, completely agree, bro. Paul mentions enduring, you know, he likens the faith to a race for a reason. We have to endure until the end. It's that simple. I completely agree. We should not expect it to get any better until it gets worse, but we know the glory and the hope on the other side if we're faithful and, you know, and are obedient. So I completely agree. And I love that. Last thing for you before we depart, how can we support you? What's next for Meech? What's next for your channel?
Yeah, follow me on X and YouTube at ArtifexMemor, MEMOR. Book is in the works. The shirts, I just got the designs back today for the White Goy summer shirts, dude. They're gonna be.
I need that.
Dude, so like, I'm gonna tease it a little bit. Think Warren Lottis meets Meech. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Think Warren Lottis meets Meech.
Okay.
I've hired a designer. Like, he's legit, and we're gonna deliver some fire book's coming out soon. And, you know, from there, I am pretty much just going to lean into this. I'm going to keep my pulse on the Charlie thing. I also don't want to just like focus on the Charlie thing forever, right? Like I really enjoyed this spiritual conversation we were having. So like, I'm kind of just putting this in God's hands. And every day for me, I wake up and have to respond to something new or do something. And so I don't really have a plan. God kind of hates plans, I think anyways, right? And so I'm kind of letting him just lead on this. And I'm trusting that what I'm doing now will ultimately be for greater good, and I don't know what the end result of that is, right? I can go to ArtifexMemoriarum.com. There's like a buy me a coffee link if you want to send me money, but like it's not that deep, and I'm just happy that people are gonna listen to this and hopefully be touched by it and start thinking about things differently and challenging power and you know it's all for Christ, dude. That's what it's about.
Amen, brother. Love that.